Macmillan Audio presents The Silverblood Promise by James Logan, narrated for you by Brenock O'Connor. For Emma, always. Chapter 1. The Lady of Last Chances. The tavern was called the Pathfinder's Gambit, though its patrons referred to it as the Armpit, or simply just the Pit, on account of its stale odour and the fact its interior rarely saw sunlight. The Pit had a particular reputation for violence, and tonight had proven no exception. The evening's current tally stood at 3 assaults, 2 stabbings and an attempted strangulation, 2 brawls and, so far at least, just the 1 death. Still, the night was young, the drink was flowing, and half the card games taking place in the tavern's smoke-filled common room were rigged. It was only a matter of time before someone else took a blade between the ribs. Could be me if I'm not careful, Lukan Gardova mused, eyeing the small pile of coins he'd won over the past half hour. The Pit's one saving grace was that it was an excellent place to win a bit of silver, and it was for this reason that Lukan found himself sitting at a table with several companions of dubious virtue, drinking gin of dubious quality, and holding 2 cards of dubious value. Peasant of crowns and a priest of blades, he thought, studying the faded illustrations. Bloody hells. It was a miserable hand, but that didn't matter. In Rummy Jake you played your opponents first and your cards second. I'll raise, the sharp-featured man to Lukan's left finally declared after squinting at his cards for what seemed like an eternity. 3 coppers. He scratched at his straggly beard. No. 4 coppers. He nudged the coins towards the centre of the table, only to pause and glance at his cards again. No. Wait. You know, Lukan said amiably, entire wars have been fought in the time you've been staring at those cards. The man glared at him, dark eyes glinting with a base cunning that hadn't yet manifested in his card play. I'm trying to think. I suspect that's the problem. The man muttered an insult under his breath as he turned back to his cards. Lukan took a swallow of gin to hide his smile. He'd seen this man's type many times before. The small-time rogue who owed too much money to the wrong people and thought that gambling would be a good way to raise the necessary funds. It might have been, had he been a good player. But he wasn't. 5 coppers, the rogue grunted, pushing his coins into the growing pile at the centre of the table. Lukan studied his own cards again, just for show. The only question in his mind was by how much to raise the bet. 8 coppers should do it. Hells. May as well make it a silver. Shouting interrupted his thoughts, and he glanced towards the bar, where a familiar scene was playing out. 2 adventuring companies squaring up to each other, the crews trading insults while their captains exchanged glares. Steel glinted in the candlelight as blades were drawn, a hush falling across the tavern as games and conversations were abandoned. The taller of the 2 captains, a woman who wore a wide-brimmed hat, tilted at a jaunty angle, said something that Lukan didn't catch. Her opposite number blinked in surprise, his face, already flushed with drink, reddening even further. Then he bellowed a laugh and held out his hand, which the woman gripped in her own. Blades were returned to their sheaths and the 2 crews exchanged smiles instead of blows, and a cheer rose to the rafters as the red-faced captain called for a round of drinks. Lukan wasn't surprised by how quickly the threat of violence had faded. He'd seen this sort of scene play out a dozen times in the 3 weeks he'd been in Torlane. Tensions ran high among the adventuring crews who made a living scavenging Faerun relics from the Greylands, a couple of leagues to the north. This sort of behaviour was just their way of blowing off steam after surviving the dangers of that shadow-haunted landscape. For those who returned, at least. How did it come to this? He asked himself, his gaze passing over the adventurers and opportunists who packed the tavern. How did I end up in this den of rogues at the edge of the world? He knew the answer all too well. Agreeing to a duel with the heir of one of the most powerful families in the old empire had been a bad mistake. But not nearly so much as...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?